Look at her getting all the attention from the boys, moaned Rose. I know, she's always getting noticed by them. What's wrong with us? Why don't they want to push the swing that we're on? Groaned Daisy. The two sisters were fed up at the attention that Afro was getting from the villagers. Afro was not only the prettiest girl in the village with her long flowing hair, beautiful sparkling eyes and beaming joyful smile that lit up everyone's day when you saw it. She was also the kindest person you could wish to know. She would do anything for anyone. Could this be her downfall? The next day the two sisters sat again, watching Afro get all the attention. They decided that they needed to get rid of her so the villagers, especially the boys, would start to notice them. They decided to play ill and tell Afro that they only had months to live unless they got some special potion from the healing well in the desert. Afro was devastated at this news and of course agreed to travel to the desert to get the water that would help her two evil sisters get better. The next day, Afro packed a rucksack and set off on her long journey to the desert. Afro walked for 2 days. She finally reached the desert, exhausted and extremely thirsty. Could this be the healing well? She thought to herself. Yes, it is. A voice came from nowhere.
Hello? Who's that?
She replied nervously. Was she hearing things? She looked around cautiously to see who had answered her thoughts, but no one was there. Afro set off again in the direction of the well. This time she walked a little quicker, hoping to get there and back as soon as she could. Suddenly, in front of her there was a sandstorm. She dropped to the floor and closed her eyes and covered her face. Within seconds, she felt like she was floating. She slowly opened her eyes to find that she was floating. However, she was in the grip of Sandman. She had heard stories of the evil Sandman capturing people and turning them into camels to work for him in the desert. At this point, she realized that she has been tricked by her nasty sisters. All of a sudden,
Put her down, Sandman!
it was Camelman, one of Sandman's failed captures.
Camelman, we meet again. This time I will make you pay!
He roared. Camelman had come up with a plan to finally defeat Sandman for good. He turned and ran towards Sandwater Lake. He got there just as Sandman reached out and grabbed his camel tail. However, Camelman's momentum carried Sandman into the water where he broke into individual grains of sand and sunk to the bottom. Afro followed them to the lake and stood desperately waiting for them to appear. After a while, she started to see bubbles on the surface. She stood nervously waiting for one or both to rise from the water. Meanwhile, the two sisters were back in the village, having lots of fun with everyone, who had forgotten about Afro's strange disappearance. Just then, Camelman broke the surface and landed next to Afro. The two waited to see if Sandman would appear or if he had finally been defeated. After a while, Afro hugged Camelman and thanked him for saving her life.
What could I do to thank you?
Whispered Afro.
Well, the only way to break my spell is to be kissed by a beautiful princess.
He replied. The two embraced and found themselves falling madly in love with each other. And when they got back to the village and they told their story and got married with everyone watching and cheering.
You betrayed us, Rosie and Daisy. For our legacy to restore, you must be punished. You will spend the rest of your life in the dungeons.
Yeah!